4 FBI agents bleeding out in a collapsed factory. 12 minutes until medevac. A disgraced contractor told to stand down. Body cam footage showing her save all 4 lives anyway. For stories like this, subscribe. The classroom smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Iris Tennant stood at the front, hand steady as she demonstrated a running locked suture on synthetic skin. 23 recruits watched, most with arms crossed, a few taking notes. The fluorescent lights made everything look clinical and flat. She kept her sleeves rolled down to the wrists despite the warmth. The door opened mid-stitch. Deputy Director Marcus Khalil stepped inside, tablet under one arm, expression already set to dismissive. He didn't knock, didn't wait for a pause. Contractor Tennant, not doctor, never doctor. Iris finished the suture before looking up. The synthetic skin lay perfect, each stitch exactly 4 millimeters apart, tension distributed evenly. She set the needle down. Sir. Khalil walked to the front, positioning himself between Iris and the recruits. He glanced at the training dummy, then at the class roster on his tablet. I've been reviewing your curriculum. He swiped through screens without looking at her. You're still teaching interrupted sutures for field wounds. Yes, sir. They're more reliable under... We've moved to continuous suturing protocols, faster closure time, less resource intensive. He turned to face the class. The Bureau updates its methods based on current research, not outdated field experience. Silence filled the room. A recruit in the 3rd row shifted in her seat. Iris kept her voice level. Continuous sutures fail if the line is compromised. In a field environment with potential contamination or secondary trauma, interrupted sutures allow. Are you arguing with updated Bureau protocol? The question hung there, sharpened to a point. Iris met his eyes, green against brown. Hers didn't waver. I'm providing context based on practical application. Khalil's jaw tightened slightly. He turned back to the recruits, holding up his tablet to show a document she couldn't see from her angle. Contractor Tennant was discharged from military service under less than ideal circumstances. Her methods reflect a mindset that prioritizes individual judgment over institutional knowledge. He lowered the tablet. The FBI operates on evidence-based protocols developed by medical professionals who understand legal and operational constraints. He looked at her now, fully, not battlefield improvisation. 3 recruits glanced at each other. One in the front row looked down at his notebook. Iris stayed still. Her hands rested at her sides, fingers relaxed. She'd learned a long time ago that stillness communicated more than defense ever could. Khalil walked toward the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. Stick to the approved curriculum. If you can't adapt to institutional standards, we'll find someone who can. The door closed behind him with a controlled click. Nobody spoke for 5 seconds. Then a recruit in the back, young guy with a fresh Quantico haircut, raised his hand tentatively. Ma'am, why do interrupted sutures matter if continuous ones are faster? Iris picked up the needle again. Her hands didn't shake. They never did anymore. Because speed doesn't matter if the wound reopens. She positioned the synthetic skin under better light. In a controlled surgical environment, continuous sutures work fine. But field medicine isn't controlled. You're working in dirt or rain or while taking fire. Your patient might get moved before you're done. If one stitch fails in a continuous line, the entire closure can unravel. She demonstrated, pulling one stitch in a continuous suture sample. The whole line loosened. Interrupted sutures are independent. One fails, the others hold. She showed the interrupted version, pulling the same stitch. The rest stayed intact. It takes 90 seconds longer, but your patient doesn't bleed out because someone pulled the wrong thread. The recruit nodded slowly. Another hand went up, a woman in the 2nd row. Where did you serve? Iris paused for half a beat. The question always came eventually. Ranger Forward Surgical Team, 3 tours, Afghanistan and Syria. A different voice, from the left side. What happened? Iris set the needle down again. She looked at the class, 23 faces in various states of curiosity and caution. Some had probably already looked her up. The discharge wasn't classified, just ugly. I disobeyed a direct order during an operation, stayed behind to treat a local interpreter who'd been wounded covering our evacuation. Command decided the risk to the mission outweighed one life. She kept her tone factual, no bitterness. I calculated differently. Did he survive? Yes. And you got discharged for it? Dishonorably. Yes. The room absorbed that. The same recruit who'd asked about sutures leaned forward slightly. Would you do it again? Iris picked up the training materials, organizing them back into the supply kit with precise movements, each tool in its designated slot. every time. She looked up at the class. Medicine isn't about following orders. It's about keeping people alive when everything is trying to kill them. You learn protocols because they're your foundation. But the day you prioritize the protocol over the person in front of you is the day you stop being a medic. She closed the kit. Class dismissed. Practice those interrupted sutures tonight. I'll be checking tension consistency tomorrow. The recruits filed out slowly, a few nodding as they passed. One, the woman from the second row, stopped at the desk. Agent Mercer, Kyle. He extended a hand. That was solid. Iris shook it briefly. You'll need more than solid if you're assigned to tactical. That's the goal. He hesitated. For what it's worth, half of us think Khalil's a bureaucrat who hasn't seen fieldwork in 15 years, and the other half think you're a liability who can't follow command structure. Iris almost smiled. Both can be true. Kyle left. She was alone in the classroom now, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. She rolled up her left sleeve, finally, letting the air hit her forearm. The Ranger tab tattoo stood out in black and tan, sharp lines that hadn't faded. Beneath it, smaller, a single word in Pashto, Zinda. She traced it once with her thumb, then rolled the sleeve back down. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Lena Cross, FBI medical director. Khalil filed a formal complaint about your teaching methods. Need to talk. My office, 1600. Iris checked her watch, 40 minutes. She gathered her materials, turned off the lights, and walked into the hallway. Recruits passed in clusters, voices echoing off the walls. Nobody made eye contact. She'd been here 6 weeks, long enough to know how this worked. The question wasn't whether she'd be fired, it was whether she'd care. If you want to see how Iris Tennant handles a crisis that turns the FBI upside down, make sure you subscribe to Emergency Hero Stories, because what she does in the next few days will leave you speechless. Where are you watching from? The hallway outside Dr. Cross's office had photographs of every FBI Academy graduating class since 1972. Iris walked past them slowly, counting the rows of faces in uniform. Clean, proud, certain. She'd never looked like that. The door was already open. Lena Cross sat behind her desk, reading glasses perched low on her nose, fingers drumming against a manila folder. She looked up when Iris entered. Close the door. Iris did. The latch clicked softly. Lena gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. Iris sat. Her posture stayed straight, hands folded in her lap, waiting. Lena removed her glasses and set them down with deliberate care. She looked tired, the kind of tired that came from fighting institutional battles she didn't choose. Khalil sent me a 3-page complaint about your teaching methodology. He says you're undermining bureau protocol, encouraging recruits to question command structure, and operating outside your contracted scope. Iris said nothing. He wants you terminated. Still nothing. Lena leaned back in her chair. I reviewed the footage from your class this morning. I also spoke to 5 of your students. She opened the folder and pulled out a printed document. Agent Mercer said you teach practical field medicine better than anyone he's trained under. Agent Vasquez said your suture demonstration was the first time she actually understood tissue tension. Agent Kowalski said you explain things like you've actually done them. She set the document down. Because you have. Iris met her eyes. Is that a problem? It is, when you publicly contradict a deputy director in front of recruits. I corrected a protocol that could get someone killed. You made Khalil look incompetent. He made himself look incompetent. Lena's expression didn't change, but something tightened around her mouth. She stood, walking to the window overlooking the training grounds. 3 groups of recruits ran formations in the distance, small figures against the Virginia hills. You're not wrong, Iris. You're just not careful. Careful doesn't stop hemorrhaging. Lena turned. This isn't a battlefield. It's a bureaucracy. There are ways to challenge protocol without making enemies. I didn't come here to make friends. Then why did you come here? The question landed heavier than it should have. Iris looked down at her hands. The calluses from years of surgical work had softened slightly in 6 weeks of teaching. Not much, but enough to notice. Because I wanted to see if I could do medicine without people dying. Lena's face softened. She returned to her desk, but didn't sit. Khalil has institutional weight. I can push back on this complaint, but if he escalates, I can't protect you. I'm not asking you to. I know. Lena sighed, which is part of the problem. She picked up a different folder, thinner, and slid it across the desk. Live training exercise scheduled for next week. Multi-agency simulation. Hostage rescue scenario at the old Mercer factory site outside Stafford. Full tactical deployment, live ammunition, coordinated response with local PD and EMS. Iris opened the folder. Diagrams of the factory layout, personnel assignments, medical contingency plans. She stopped on one line. No field intubation kit? Medevac has full equipment. ETA is 12 minutes from injury call. 12 minutes is a lifetime with a compromised airway. Lena crossed her arms. The protocol assumes basic stabilization until transport arrives. And if basic stabilization isn't enough, then the scenario is adjusted. It's a training exercise, Iris. Controlled variables. Iris closed the folder. Combat doesn't have controlled variables. This isn't combat. Tell that to the first agent who can't breathe while waiting 12 minutes for a helicopter. Lena's jaw tightened. You're an observer, not a participant. Khalil specifically requested you stay in the command vehicle. Because he doesn't want me contradicting his protocols again? Because he doesn't trust you to follow orders. The words sat between them, blunt and true. Iris stood. Is there anything else? Lena studied her for a long moment. I read your service record, the full one, not the sanitized version. Iris went still. 647 field surgeries, mortality rate below 4%, 3 commendations for surgical excellence under fire, 2 silver stars, 1 court-martial. Lena's voice dropped. The interpreter you saved, Jamil Karimi, he testified at your hearing, said you performed a thoracic surgery with a flashlight and a field kit while his blood pressure was crashing, said you talked to him the entire time in Pashto, telling him about your sister's wedding so he'd stay conscious. Iris's throat tightened slightly. He's alive because you refused to leave, and you lost everything because of it. Didn't you? Iris looked at the door. Am I dismissed? Lena sat back down, suddenly looking every bit of her 52 years. You're still employed, for now. But Iris, please, try not to give Khalil another reason to come after you. Iris nodded once and left. The hallway was empty now, the afternoon light slanting through tall windows. She walked slowly, letting the silence settle. Her phone buzzed. A text from Kyle Mercer. Bunch of us grabbing coffee at the commissary. You should—
Will come, she typed back. On duty. You're always on duty. She didn't respond. Another text. We're talking about the live exercise. Couple people have questions about the medical setup. Iris stopped walking. She looked at the message for 10 seconds, then pocketed her phone and changed direction. The commissary was half full, the smell of burned coffee and microwaved food thick in the air. Kyle sat at a corner table with 4 other recruits. He waved her over. She approached but didn't sit. Questions about the exercise? A woman, late 20s, dark hair pulled into a tight bun, spoke first. Agent Vasquez, we were reviewing the medical protocols. The nearest trauma center is 18 minutes by ground transport, 12 by air, but the medevac has to come from Quantico, and if weather's bad or they're already deployed, 25 to 30 minutes. Iris finished. Vasquez nodded. What happens if someone goes into shock before then? You stabilize. IV fluids, pressure bandages, oxygen if available. And if they're not breathing? Iris looked at her. Then you have about 4 minutes before brain damage starts. Kyle leaned forward. The protocol says basic airway management, head tilt, jaw thrust, which works if the airway is obstructed but structurally intact. And if it's not? Iris pulled out a chair and sat. She kept her voice low. If the airway is crushed, burned, or compromised by trauma, basic management won't work. You need a surgical airway, cricothyrotomy. You have 90 seconds to perform it, or the patient dies. Vasquez glanced at Kyle. The kit doesn't include cric supplies. I know. Why not? Because the protocol assumes you won't need them. Another recruit, younger, maybe 25, spoke up. That seems like a bad assumption. Iris almost smiled. It is. Kyle tapped the table. Can you teach us, off the record? Iris looked at him. Khalil would consider that insubordination. Khalil's not here. She studied the group. 5 faces, all watching her with something between hope and desperation. Tomorrow, 0600, bring your field kits. They nodded. Iris stood and left without another word.
Outside, the Virginia sky was darkening, clouds rolling in from the west. She walked across the training grounds toward the contractor housing units, hands in her pockets, mind already running through the lesson plan. She'd teach them the procedure Khalil said they didn't need, and when the exercise went wrong, because it would, they'd be ready, even if she wasn't supposed to be. 6 in the morning came cold and gray. Iris arrived at the medical training bay 15 minutes early, carrying a duffel bag and a thermos of coffee she wouldn't drink. The lights were already on. Kyle and the others were waiting. 6 recruits total now, 1 more than last night. They stood near the equipment lockers, field kits open on the tables, speaking in low voices that stopped when she entered. She set the duffel down and unzipped it without preamble. Cricothyrotomy, emergency surgical airway. You perform it when the patient can't breathe and you can't intubate. She pulled out training mannequins, anatomically correct necks with realistic tissue layers. You'll have between 60 and 90 seconds before hypoxia causes permanent brain damage. No room for hesitation, no second attempts. She placed a mannequin in front of each recruit. Find your landmarks first. Thyroid cartilage, cricothyroid membrane, cricoid cartilage. Her fingers moved across the synthetic neck, identifying each structure. The membrane is here, small target, maybe 2 centimeters high. You miss it, you puncture the thyroid or trachea, patient dies. Vasquez touched the mannequin carefully, feeling for the landmarks. How do you know if you're in the right place? Practice, repetition, muscle memory. Iris demonstrated, fingers pressing lightly. Thyroid cartilage is the Adam's apple. Below that, a small depression. That's your membrane. Cricoid cartilage is the ring below. Memorize the distance between them. She handed out scalpels, makeshift from training supplies. In the field, you use whatever you have. Scalpel if you're lucky, knife if you're not. I've used broken glass. Kyle looked up. Seriously? Helmand Province, roadside IED. Medic was down, supply scattered. Local kid had facial trauma and his airway was filling with blood. She didn't elaborate. He lived. The room went quiet. Make your incision horizontal, 1 centimeter, through skin and membrane. You're not trying to be neat, you're making a hole. She demonstrated on the mannequin, the scalpel moving in one smooth motion. Once you're through, insert your tube. Pen casing works if you don't have medical equipment, drinking straw, anything rigid enough to hold the airway open. She inserted a small tube, securing it with tape. Check for air movement. Listen, feel. If the chest rises and you hear breath sounds, you're in. If not, you're in the wrong place and the patient has 30 seconds left. Vasquez swallowed. What if we miss? You don't. Iris stepped back. Begin. I'll time you. They worked in silence, hands moving with varying degrees of confidence. Kyle went first, his incision slightly too deep but placement correct, 93 seconds. Vasquez followed, 78 seconds, clean entry. The youngest recruit, a guy named Chen, hesitated on the incision and took 2 minutes. Again, Iris said, all of you. They repeated the procedure 6 times each. By the 4th round, Kyle was down to 62 seconds. Vasquez hit 59. Chen finally broke 90. Iris watched each one, correcting hand position, angle of entry, depth of incision. She didn't praise, didn't criticize, just corrected and moved on. At 7:15, the door opened. Dr. Lena Cross stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. Nobody moved. Lena walked slowly into the room, looking at the mannequins, the training supplies, the recruits frozen mid-procedure. Her eyes settled on Iris. Contractor tenant, a word. Iris set down the scalpel she'd been holding and followed Lena into the hallway. The door closed behind them. Lena kept her voice low. I just received a call from Deputy Director Khalil. Someone informed him you're conducting unauthorized training sessions. The recruits asked for supplemental instruction on a procedure specifically excluded from the protocol. Approved curriculum, because the curriculum is incomplete. Lena's jaw tightened. You're doing exactly what I asked you not to do. I'm teaching them how to save lives. You're giving Khalil ammunition to terminate your contract. Iris looked through the small window in the door. The recruits had resumed practicing, movements more confident now, muscle memory starting to solidify. Then he terminates it. Lena stepped closer, voice dropping further. Why are you here, Iris? Really? Because if you wanted to self-destruct, there are easier ways. Iris turned back to her. I'm here because these people are going into situations where protocol won't save them. Experience will, and I have experience. You're a contractor, not their commanding officer, not their mentor. You teach basic field medicine and stay within guidelines. Guidelines that assume nothing goes wrong. That's not your decision to make. Iris met her eyes, green on brown, neither backing down. It became my decision the moment they asked me to teach them something that might keep them alive. Lena stared at her for a long beat, then looked away, shoulders dropping slightly. Khalil's escalating this to the academy director, formal review. They'll examine your conduct, your teaching methods, your adherence to contract terms. When? After the live exercise. He wants documentation of your inability to follow operational parameters. Iris absorbed that. So he's waiting for me to fail. He's waiting for you to prove him right. Lena's voice softened slightly. Don't give him the satisfaction. She walked away, footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Iris stood alone for a moment, then returned to the training bay. The recruits looked up, tension written across their faces. Are we in trouble? Chen asked. Iris picked up a fresh mannequin and placed it on the table. Only if you don't learn this correctly. Kyle almost smiled. So we keep going? Until you can do it in your sleep. They trained for another hour. By 8:30, every recruit could perform a successful cricothyrotomy in under 70 seconds. Vasquez hit 48, Kyle managed 51. Iris packed the equipment away, each piece returned to its precise location in the duffel. The recruits helped, movements efficient, no one speaking. Vasquez broke the silence. Why are you risking this for us? Iris zipped the bag closed. Because someone risked it for me once. Your commanding officer? My first trauma patient, Ranger, who took shrapnel to the neck. I was 26, 3 weeks into my first deployment. His airway was collapsing and I froze. She straightened, slinging the bag over her shoulder. Senior medic saw me panicking, grabbed my hand, placed it on the landmarks, talked me through every step while the guy was turning blue. 67 seconds, felt like an hour. Did he make it? Kyle asked. Yeah, and after, the medic told me something I never forgot. She looked at each of them. He said, hesitation is just fear that hasn't met competence yet, so you train until competence is louder than fear. She moved toward the door. Live exercise is in 4 days. If something goes wrong, you'll know what to do. Whether or not you're allowed to do it is your decision. Vasquez stood. What would you do? Iris paused at the door, hand on the frame, not turning around. I'd save the life, every time. She left them there, the training base silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet sound of 6 people understanding exactly what she meant. Outside, the morning had warmed slightly, clouds breaking apart to reveal patches of pale blue. Iris walked across the grounds toward the contractor housing, duffel bag heavy on her shoulder. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. This is Special Agent Rahim Ansari, Counterterrorism. I'd like to speak with you about your service record. Are you available this afternoon? Iris stopped walking. She stared at the message for 10 seconds, then typed back. Why? The response came immediately. Because I know what really happened in Kandahar, and I think you deserve better than what they gave you. Iris's chest tightened. She didn't respond, just pocketed the phone and kept walking. 4 days until the exercise. 4 days until everything Khalil believed about her would either be confirmed or shattered. She knew which one it would be. She just didn't know if it would matter. Agent Ansari met Rahim Ansari in a conference room on the 3rd floor of the administration building. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at the far end of the table with a closed laptop and a paper coffee cup. 41, she guessed. Dark hair starting to gray at the temples. Calm eyes that tracked her movement as she entered. He stood and extended a hand. Agent Ansari, Counterterrorism. Thank you for meeting me. His grip was firm, but not performative. Iris shook once and sat across from him, keeping 2 chairs of distance between them. Your text said you know what happened in Kandahar. Ansari sat back down. I do, because I was the analyst who reviewed the after-action reports from Operation Lionheart, classified briefings, full mission timeline, including the part where Major Iris Tennant disobeyed a direct evacuation order to perform emergency thoracic surgery on an Afghan interpreter under active fire. Iris kept her face neutral. That's in my discharge paperwork. The sanitized version, yes, What's not in the public record is that Jamil Karimi was feeding coalition forces intelligence on a high-value Taliban network. His survival led to the capture of 3 bomb makers and prevented an attack on a NATO supply convoy. He opened his laptop and turned it toward her. A document filled the screen, sections redacted in black, but enough visible to see command communications, mission timelines, casualty reports. Your commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Brennan, ordered the evacuation because he assessed Karimi as a tactical loss. He believed extracting you and the remaining team took priority over one local asset. Iris's jaw tightened. I'm aware of his assessment. What you might not be aware of is that Brennan's decision was later flagged by intelligence as a critical operational failure. Karimi's intel network collapsed because command didn't prioritize his survival. It took 8 months to rebuild those channels. Ansari closed.
The dap top. You were court-martialed for insubordination. Brennan was quietly reassigned stateside and his career stalled, but only one of you lost everything. Iris looked at him for a long moment. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm Afghan-American. My family came here as refugees in the 90s. I know what interpreters risk when they work with coalition forces, and I know most of them get abandoned when things go bad. His voice didn't waver. You didn't abandon him. You should have been commended, not discharged. Iris leaned back in her chair. The Army doesn't commend people who ignore orders. The Army protects its command structure, doesn't mean the command structure was right. Silence settled between them. Outside, the muted sounds of the academy continued, distant voices and footsteps in hallways. Iris finally spoke. What do you want, Agent Ansari? I want you to know that some of us see what you did as exactly what a combat surgeon is supposed to do, save lives, even when the system says not to. That doesn't change my discharge status. No, but it might change how people here perceive you. Iris studied him. You mean Khalil? Ansari's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Deputy Director Khalil has a reputation for valuing institutional compliance over operational flexibility. He sees your background as a liability. He's not wrong, isn't he? Ansari leaned forward slightly. You've been here 6 weeks. In that time, you've taught field medicine with a practical competency most of our instructors don't have. Your students respect you. Your methods work. My methods got me dishonorably discharged. Your methods saved a man's life and preserved an intelligence network. The fact that you were punished for it says more about the institution than it does about you. Iris's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Text from Kyle. Exercise briefing moved up. Tomorrow, 0900. Khalil's running it. She pocketed the phone and looked back at Ansari. The live exercise is in 3 days. Khalil wants me observing from the command vehicle, non-participant. I know. I reviewed the operational plan. Then you know he's setting me up to be irrelevant. Ansari tilted his head slightly. Or he's putting you in a position where you can't intervene, even if something goes wrong. The implication hung between them. Iris stood. I appreciate the context, Agent Ansari, but it doesn't change my situation. Ansari stood as well. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, setting it on the table. If anything happens during that exercise, anything that doesn't match the official narrative, call me. I have access to operational footage, body cams, comms recordings. Iris looked at the card but didn't pick it up. Why would I need that? Because I've seen enough cover-ups to know when one's being prepared. He moved toward the door, pausing before opening it. Khalil's building a case against you, documentation of protocol violations, witness statements about unauthorized training. He wants you gone. Then I'll be gone. Ansari met her eyes. Or you'll prove you're exactly what this institution needs, even if it doesn't know it yet. He left. Iris stood alone in the conference room, staring at the business card on the table. She picked it up finally, reading the contact information, then slipped it into her pocket next to her phone. The next morning, the briefing room was full. 30 agents, 12 support staff, 4 medical contractors, including Iris. Khalil stood at the front, beside a large screen showing the factory layout in detailed schematics. He waited for silence, then began.
Operation Gatehouse, live training exercise, simulated hostage scenario at the former Mercer industrial site in Stafford, suspected armed extremists holding 2 civilians, full tactical response with live ammunition and coordinated entry. The screen shifted to aerial views of the factory, 3 buildings, partially collapsed roofing, rusted infrastructure. Primary entry team, 6 agents. Secondary containment, 8 agents. Sniper overwatch, 2 positions. Medical staging at the command vehicle, evacuation route pre-established with local EMS. He clicked to the next slide. Medical protocols. Medevac response time, 12 minutes from injury call. Ground transport to Stafford Regional, 18 minutes. All medical contractors will remain at the staging area unless explicitly deployed by tactical command. His eyes found Iris in the back row. No exceptions. Kyle raised his hand. "Sir, what's the protocol if someone needs a surgical airway before medevac arrives?" Khalil's expression didn't change. "Basic airway management will be sufficient for the 12-minute window. If escalation is required, medevac personnel are equipped for advanced interventions. But if the airway is compromised and basic management doesn't work, then the scenario will be adjusted." Khalil's tone sharpened. "This is a controlled training exercise, Agent Mercer. Variables are managed. We don't plan for catastrophic failure because we don't anticipate catastrophic failure." Vasquez spoke up from the third row. "With respect, sir, combat doesn't follow training parameters." Khalil turned to her. "This isn't combat, Agent Vasquez. It's a learning environment designed to build competency within realistic but manageable constraints. Manageable constraints don't prepare us for when things go wrong. Things won't go wrong if you follow protocol." The room went quiet. Iris kept her eyes on the screen, not moving, not reacting. Khalil continued. "Exercise commences at 0800, day after tomorrow. Full gear, live comms. Body cams mandatory for all tactical personnel. Medical contractors will monitor from the staging area and provide post-exercise analysis." He looked directly at Iris again. "Observation only. Understood?" She met his gaze. "Understood." The briefing ended 10 minutes later. Agents filed out in clusters, voices low. Kyle and Vasquez hung back, waiting until the room cleared before approaching Iris. "He's boxing you out," Kyle said quietly. Iris gathered her materials. "He's following protocol. Protocol that assumes nothing goes wrong. It's a training exercise. Maybe nothing will." Vasquez crossed her arms. "You don't believe that." Iris looked at her. "What I believe doesn't matter. I'm an observer." That's the assignment. "And if someone's dying and you're 30 feet away in a command vehicle?" Iris's hand stilled on her notebook. She looked at both of them, young faces watching her with something between hope and challenge. "Then someone else will handle it." Kyle's expression tightened. "You taught us cricothyrotomy because you knew we might need it. I taught you because you asked. You taught us because you know Khalil's wrong." Iris picked up her bag and moved toward the door. Kyle stepped slightly into her path, not blocking but present. "What would you do," he asked, "if it was real, if someone was dying?" Iris stopped. The question settled like weight. She looked at him, then at Vasquez, then at the empty briefing room with its screens and protocols and carefully managed constraints. I'd calculate how long they had, and I'd decide if 12 minutes was too long to wait. She walked past him, out into the hallway where afternoon light slanted through tall windows. Behind her, she heard Vasquez say quietly, "She's going to do it anyway." Kyle's response was even softer. "Yeah, she is." Iris kept walking, her footsteps steady on the polished floor. 2 days until the exercise. 2 days until Khalil's controlled variables met the things she'd learned a long time ago, in places where control didn't exist. Reality didn't follow protocol, and when it broke, someone had to be ready. If you want to see what happens when everything goes wrong, subscribe and stay with us, because the next 48 hours will change everything. The morning of the exercise broke cold and overcast. Iris arrived at the staging area 40 minutes before deployment, wearing contractor identification and a tactical vest marked medical in reflective letters. The command vehicle sat 30 yards from the factory perimeter, surrounded by equipment cases and communication arrays. Khalil was already there, reviewing tablet readouts with 2 senior tactical coordinators. He glanced up when Iris approached, his expression unreadable. Contractor Tenant, you'll monitor from inside the vehicle. Headset for comms, do not exit unless I give explicit authorization. Understood. She climbed into the vehicle. The interior was cramped, filled with monitors showing multiple body cam feeds, radio equipment, and a narrow bench along one wall. Another medical contractor, older guy named Patterson, sat reviewing supply manifests. He nodded at her. First time observing one of these? Yes. Khalil roused them tight. Everything by the book. Usually goes smooth. Iris said nothing. She put on the headset and adjusted the frequency, listening to tactical teams running final checks. Voices overlapped, calm and procedural. Alpha team, comm check. Alpha copies. Bravo team, status. Bravo set, awaiting green light. She watched the monitors. 6 body cam feeds showing different angles of the factory approach. Agents moved in formation, weapons ready, movements practiced and precise. Outside, the dawn light filtered through heavy clouds. The factory loomed ahead, 3 stories of rusted metal and broken windows. Parts of the roof had collapsed inward, leaving jagged gaps in the structure. Khalil's voice came through the comms. All teams, this is command. Exercise is live. Repeat, exercise is live. Rules of engagement in effect. Execute on my mark. A pause. Mark. The teams moved. Alpha entered through the main loading bay. Bravo circled to the east entrance. Sniper teams confirmed position on elevated ground 200 yards out. Iris watched the feeds. Smooth entry. Controlled advance. Exactly as briefed. Kyle's voice came through. Calm. Alpha 2, first floor clear. Moving to stairwell. Vasquez followed. Bravo 3, east corridor secure. No contact. The exercise unfolded in careful increments. Rooms cleared, hallways checked. The hostages, played by Academy staff, were located on the 2nd floor in a makeshift barricade scenario. 10 minutes in, everything was textbook. Then the sound came through the comms. A sharp crack, louder than gunfire. Structural collapse. Kyle's voice, suddenly tight. Alpha 2, we have a problem. Stairwell just gave out. Repeat, structural failure, multiple agents down. The body cam feeds jolted. Dust filled the screens. Shouting overlapped. Urgent but not panicked yet. Bravo, hold position. Alpha, report casualties. Status, then Kyle again. 3 agents down. Chen's unconscious, possible head trauma. Vasquez has a leg fracture. Morrison's not moving. Debris across his chest. Khalil's voice cut through. Medevac, this is command. We have casualties. Prepare for immediate deployment. Radio response. Medevac poppies. ETA 12 minutes. Iris's hands tightened on the edge of the bench. She leaned forward, watching the body cam feeds. Dust was clearing. The collapsed stairwell had taken down part of the 2nd floor walkway. Steel beams lay across the rubble. One agent, Morrison, was pinned beneath a beam, his face pale even through the grainy camera feed. Kyle's camera showed him moving toward Morrison, hands reaching for the beam. I need help here. This thing's too heavy. 2 other agents joined him, trying to lift. The beam shifted slightly, but didn't move enough. Morrison coughed. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. His chest tightened. I knew that cough. Pneumothorax, punctured lung, air filling the chest cavity, collapsing the lung, pressure building against the heart. He had minutes, maybe less. Kyle's voice again. Morrison struggling to breathe. Chest injury. We need medical now. Khalil responded. Stabilize him. Medevac is 10 minutes out. He's not going to last 10 minutes. Do what you can, Alpha 2. Medical is en route. Iris stood. Patterson looked at her. What are you doing? She moved toward the vehicle door. Patterson grabbed her arm. Khalil said no exit without authorization. She pulled free, gently but firmly. Morrison has a tension pneumothorax. If someone doesn't decompress his chest in the next 3 minutes, the pressure will stop his heart. Medevac can handle it. Medevac is 10 minutes away. He has 3. She pushed the door open and dropped to the ground. Khalil turned immediately, stepping toward her. Contractor Tenant returned to the vehicle. Iris kept walking toward the factory entrance. Agent Morrison is dying. Medical personnel will stabilize him. There are no medical personnel inside that building, just tactical agents who aren't trained for thoracic decompression. Khalil moved in front of her, blocking her path. You are not authorized to enter an active tactical site. Iris stopped. She met his eyes, hers cold and absolutely certain. Then authorize me. This is a controlled exercise. We follow protocol. Your protocol is going to kill him. Medevac is 8 minutes out. He doesn't have 8 minutes. He has maybe 2. And if you don't let me through, you're going to watch him die on 6 different camera feeds while you explain to his family why you prioritized procedure over his life. Khalil's jaw clenched. Around them, other personnel had stopped, watching. The comms crackled. Kyle's voice, strained. Command, Morrison's vitals are crashing. Pulse is thready. He's cyanotic. Another voice, Vasquez. He's turning blue. We're losing him. Khalil stared at Iris. She didn't blink, didn't move, just held his gaze with the same calm she'd carried into 100 impossible situations. He stepped aside. If you deviate from medical protocol, your contract is terminated. Iris was already moving. She grabbed a field kit from the equipment case near the vehicle and ran toward the factory. Her boots hit gravel, then concrete, then the debris-strewn floor of the loading bay. Kyle's body cam had given her the layout. 2nd floor, collapsed stairwell, east side. She found an intact maintenance ladder and climbed, the field kit bouncing against her hip. The 2nd floor was chaos. Dust hung in the air, thick enough to taste. 3 agents worked frantically around Morrison, whose face had gone from pale to gray-blue. The beam across his chest hadn't moved. Iris dropped to her knees beside him. How long has he been cyanotic? Kyle looked up. 90 seconds, maybe more. She ripped open Morrison's tactical vest, then his shirt. His chest showed asymmetry, the right side visibly distended. She placed her hands on his ribcage. No movement on the right. Trachea deviated to the left. Textbook tension pneumothorax. I need space. Everyone back. They moved. Iris opened the field kit, pulling out a 14-gauge needle catheter. She palpated Morrison's chest, finding the 2nd intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. Her hands didn't shake. She inserted the needle in one smooth motion, angling it over the rib to avoid the neurovascular bundle. The resistance of skin, then fascia, then the pleural space. A hiss of air escaped under pressure. Morrison gasped, a ragged inhale that sounded like resurrection. The color started returning to his face. His chest began to rise and fall, asymmetric but functional. Iris held the catheter in place, securing it with tape from the kit. She checked his pulse. Stronger. Still fast, but no longer barely palpable. Get that beam off him, carefully. Kyle and 2 others lifted. This time, with Morrison able to breathe and assist slightly, the beam shifted. They dragged him clear of the debris. Iris checked him again. Pupils reactive, breathing labored but present, pulse stabilizing. She looked at Kyle. Vasquez. Fractured tibia, stable. Chen. Concussion, awake now. Iris nodded. Medevac's pulse. Morrison needs a chest tube, but he'll make it. Kyle stared at her. How did you? Later. The sound of rotors grew louder outside. The medevac had arrived. 2 paramedics entered with a stretcher, taking over Morrison's care with professional efficiency. They looked at the needle decompression, then at Iris. Who placed this? I did. You just saved his life. They loaded Morrison onto the stretcher and carried him out. Vasquez and Chen followed, both ambulatory with assistance. The factory went quiet, except for the sound of equipment being moved, and agents checking the structural stability of the remaining floors. Iris stood slowly, her hands finally still. She looked at Kyle. Your training worked. You kept him alive until I got here. You weren't supposed to be here. I know. Outside, Khalil was waiting. His face was unreadable, but his posture was rigid. Behind him, Patterson and 2 other coordinators stood watching. Iris walked toward him, field kit in hand. He spoke before she reached him. You disobeyed a direct order. I saved a life. You compromised operational security. There was no security to compromise. The exercise was already collapsed. That's not your determination to make. Iris stopped in front of him. She was tired, not physically, but the kind of tired that came from fighting the same battle in different uniforms for too many years. Agent Morrison had a tension pneumothorax. Without decompression, he had approximately 90 seconds before cardiac arrest. Medevac arrived 6 minutes after I performed the procedure. You do the math, Deputy Director. Khalil's expression didn't soften. Your contract is terminated effective immediately. Surrender your credentials and leave the premises. Iris unclipped her ID badge and handed it to him. She looked at him for one last moment, her green eyes steady and entirely unrepentant. He's alive because someone acted instead of waiting for permission. If that's worth termination, then you're running the wrong kind of institution. She walked away, past the command vehicle, past the gathered personnel, toward the parking area where her truck waited. Behind her, Kyle's voice carried faintly. She just did what we're supposed to do. Khalil didn't respond. Iris climbed into her truck, set the field kit on the passenger seat, and started the engine. She'd been fired before, dishonorably discharged, labeled insubordinate. It never changed the math. Saving a life was always worth more than keeping a job. She drove away from Quantico as the morning clouds began to break apart, leaving the academy behind in her rearview mirror. What she didn't know was that 6 body cams had recorded everything, and one counterterrorism agent with access to operational footage was already downloading the files. Iris spent the next 2 days in her apartment 30 miles outside Quantico, ignoring calls from numbers she didn't recognize and one from Dr. Lena Cross that she let go to voicemail. She ran in the mornings, cooked meals she barely ate, and slept in fragments that never felt like rest. On the 3rd day, her phone rang at 7 in the morning. Rahim Ansari. She answered. Dr. Tennant, I need you to come to Quantico, today, as soon as possible. His voice carried an urgency that cut through her exhaustion. I was terminated. I'm not allowed on the premises. You are, as of 30 minutes ago. Your termination has been suspended pending formal review. Director Castillo wants to see you. 10 o'clock. Iris sat up. Why? Because I submitted the body cam footage from the FBI director's office, along with a formal incident report, and what's on those cameras doesn't match Deputy Director Khalil's official narrative. Silence. What did Khalil report? Iris asked. That you acted recklessly, endangered personnel, and performed an unnecessary medical procedure against direct orders. He characterized Agent Morrison's condition as stable and your intervention as grandstanding. Morrison was 90 seconds from cardiac arrest. I know. The footage proves it. Which is why you need to be here when Castillo reviews it. Iris closed her eyes, processing. This is going to end my career permanently. Or it's going to prove that your career should never have ended in the first place. Ansari paused. 10 o'clock, administration building, 4th floor. Don't be late. He hung up. Iris sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the phone in her hand. Then she stood, showered, dressed in the only professional clothes she owned that weren't contractor gear, and drove back to Quantico. The administration building felt different now, colder. She signed in at security, received a temporary visitor badge, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Ansari met her outside a large conference room. Director Castillo is inside. Khalil's here too. So is Dr. Cross and the Academy's legal counsel. Iris nodded. What do I need to know? The truth, that's all. The footage speaks for itself, but Khalil's going to try to control the narrative. Don't let him. Ansari opened the door. The conference room was large, dominated by a long table with 8 chairs. Director Margaret Castillo sat at the head, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and the kind of presence that didn't need volume to command attention. Khalil sat to her right, expression carefully neutral. Dr. Cross sat across from him, fingers laced on the table. A man Iris didn't recognize, presumably legal counsel, sat near the far end with a laptop open. Ansari gestured to a chair near the middle. Iris sat. He took the seat beside her. Castillo looked at Iris for a long moment, then spoke. Dr. Tennant, thank you for coming. I've reviewed Special Agent Ansari's report and the accompanying video evidence from the training exercise 3 days ago. Before we proceed, I want to hear your account of what happened, in your own words. Start from when you exited the command vehicle. Iris kept her hands flat on the table, her voice steady. I was monitoring comms from inside the vehicle when the structural collapse occurred. Agent Morrison was pinned under a steel beam with visible respiratory distress. His symptoms, difficulty breathing, cyanosis, and observable chest asymmetry, indicated tension pneumothorax. I calculated he had between 2 and 3 minutes before the pressure in his chest cavity would cause cardiac arrest. She didn't look at Khalil. Medevac ETA was 10 minutes. I determined the time gap was fatal and requested authorization to intervene. Deputy Director Khalil denied it. I explained the medical urgency. He maintained his position. I made the decision to act anyway. Castillo's expression didn't change. You knowingly disobeyed a direct order? Yes, ma'am. Why? Iris met her eyes. Because Agent Morrison was going to die if someone didn't decompress his chest immediately. Protocol said to wait. Medicine said to act. I chose medicine. Khalil leaned forward slightly. Director, with respect, contractor tenant's characterization of the situation is exaggerated. Agent Morrison's condition was serious but not immediately life-threatening. Her intervention was unnecessary and created additional risk in an already unstable environment. Castillo turned to him. Agent Ansari's report includes medical analysis from 3 independent trauma surgeons who reviewed the body cam footage. All 3 concluded that Morrison exhibited classic signs of tension pneumothorax and would have experienced cardiac arrest within minutes without decompression. Do you dispute their assessment? Khalil's jaw tightened. I dispute that a contractor with a history of insubordination should have unilateral authority to override tactical command during an active operation. It wasn't an active operation, Iris said quietly. It was a training exercise that became a mass casualty event. The variables you said were controlled weren't, and the protocol you insisted would work didn't account for the reality of what actually happened. Khalil's eyes turned to her, cold. You were hired to teach basic field medicine and observe training protocols, not to make command decisions. I was hired because I have experience keeping people alive in situations where protocol fails. That's what I did. Castillo raised a hand, stopping the exchange. Ansari, play the footage. Ansari opened his laptop and connected it to the large monitor on the wall. The screen flickered, then showed a body cam feed, Kyle's perspective. The collapsed stairwell, dust. Morrison pinned under the beam, his face pale. The audio came through, voices overlapping. He's not moving. Check his airway. He's breathing, but barely. Kyle's hands appeared in frame, trying to lift the beam. It didn't move. Morrison coughed, blood at his lips. His chest showed visible asymmetry, the right side distended. Khalil's voice came through the comms. Stabilize him. Medevac is 10 minutes out. Kyle's voice, tight with stress. He's not going to last 10 minutes. The timestamp in the corner showed seconds ticking by. Morrison's color changed from pale to gray. His breathing became shallow, desperate. Then Iris appeared in frame, dropping to her knees beside him. Her hands moved with absolute precision. Vest open, shirt torn, palpating the chest. Needle catheter inserted in one smooth motion. The hiss of released air was audible even through the camera's microphone. Morrison gasped. His chest rose. Color began returning to his face. The entire sequence, from Iris's arrival to the decompression, took 43 seconds. The footage continued. Medevac arriving 6 minutes later. Paramedics taking over. One of them looking at the needle placement and saying clearly, whoever did this saved his life. Ansari paused the video. The room was silent. Castillo looked at Khalil. Deputy Director, you characterized Dr. Tennant's actions as unnecessary. The footage shows Agent Morrison in respiratory failure. 3 independent medical experts confirm he was minutes from death. Medevac arrived 6 minutes after Dr. Tennant's intervention. Do you still maintain her actions were unnecessary? Khalil's face remained controlled, but tension showed in the set of his shoulders. Her actions may have been medically sound, but they violated operational protocol. Chain of command exists for a reason. Chain of command doesn't save lives when it's prioritized over medical necessity, Iris said. Khalil turned to her. You're a contractor, not an agent, not a decision maker. You follow orders or you don't belong here. Agent Morrison is alive because I didn't follow orders. That's not the point. That's exactly the point, Castillo's voice cut through. Enough. Both of them went quiet. Castillo stood, walking slowly to the monitor. She gestured at the frozen image of Iris performing the needle decompression. "I've been with the Bureau for 32 years. I've seen protocols save lives, and I've seen them fail. What I'm looking at here is someone who recognized a fatal situation and had the competence to act when everyone else was waiting for permission." She turned back to the table. "Dr. Tennant, your personnel file shows a dishonorable discharge from the Army for disobeying orders during a combat operation. Agent Ansari's report includes the classified after-action analysis showing that your decision to stay and treat an Afghan interpreter directly contributed to actionable intelligence that saved coalition lives." Iris's chest tightened. "You were punished for doing the right thing. And 3 days ago, Deputy Director Khalil attempted to punish you again for the same reason." Castillo looked at Khalil. "Your concern for protocol is noted, but protocol that prevents competent personnel from saving lives when they have the ability to do so is a protocol that needs revision." She sat back down. "Dr. Tennant's termination is rescinded. Effective immediately, she is reinstated with full contractor status." Khalil's expression hardened. "Director, I strongly object." "Your objection is noted and overruled." Castillo's tone didn't invite argument. Furthermore, Dr. Tennant will be offered a permanent position as Senior Tactical Medical Instructor with authority to redesign the field medicine curriculum. Iris's breath caught. Castillo looked at her. "You'll have full autonomy over training protocols, access to tactical simulation facilities, and the authority to implement procedures you deem medically necessary. You'll report directly to Dr. Cross and to me, not to Deputy Director Khalil." Khalil stood. "This sets a dangerous precedent." "No," Castillo said. "It sets the correct one. Competence and experience matter. Dr. Tennant has both. She's proven it twice, once in Afghanistan and once here. This institution should be supporting people like her, not marginalizing them." She stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Dr. Tennant, you'll have 48 hours to consider the offer. Agent Ansari will provide the formal documentation." Castillo walked to the door, pausing. "One more thing. Agent Morrison is recovering well. He asked me to pass along his gratitude. He's alive because you refused to wait for permission to do the right thing." She left. Khalil followed without looking at Iris, his movements rigid with suppressed anger. Dr. Cross stood, walking over to Iris. "I told you not to give him ammunition." Iris almost smiled. "I didn't. I gave him evidence." Cross shook her head, but there was something like respect in her expression. "Welcome back, officially." She left. Ansari closed his laptop. 48 hours, but I'm guessing you already know your answer." Iris looked at him. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. People like you don't come along often. The system should adapt to you, not the other way around." He handed her a folder. "Offer details, salary, scope of authority. Read it, think about it. Then say yes." He left her alone in the conference room. Iris sat in the silence, holding the folder, staring at the blank monitor where 43 seconds of footage had changed everything. She opened the folder and began to read. Iris spent 47 hours thinking about the offer, not because she didn't know her answer, but because accepting meant something she'd stopped believing was possible. It meant the institution was willing to change. On the second day, she walked into Dr. Cross's office and set the signed contract on her desk. Cross looked at it, then at her. "You're sure?" "Yes." "Khalil's still your superior in the administrative chain. He won't make this easy." "I'm not here for easy." Cross almost smiled. "No, you're not." She filed the contract and stood. "Your office is on the second floor, medical training wing. You'll have 2 teaching assistants, access to all tactical simulation facilities, and budget authority for equipment procurement. First curriculum review is in 3 weeks. You'll present to the Academy Board." Iris nodded. "What about the recruits I was teaching?" "They're officially assigned to your program now. Kyle Mercer requested transfer to your training track. So did Vasquez and 4 others. Chen? Him too. He said you're the only instructor who teaches like lives actually depend on it." Iris absorbed that. "When do I start?" "Now." The office was small but functional. Desk, filing cabinets, a window overlooking the training grounds. Iris set her bag down and stood there for a moment, letting the space settle around her. A knock on the door. Kyle stood in the hallway, Vasquez beside him. "Heard you were back," Kyle said, officially. Vasquez stepped inside. "We also heard you're redesigning the field medicine program. That's the plan." Kyle crossed his arms, something between respect and curiosity in his expression. "What's going to be different?" Iris looked at both of them. Everything that should have been taught from the beginning. Tension pneumothorax, hemorrhage control, field airways, trauma assessment under pressure. The things that actually keep people alive when protocol isn't enough. Khalil's not going to like it. Khalil doesn't have to like it. He just has to stay out of the way. Vasquez smiled slightly. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow, 0600. Bring your field kits and anyone else who wants to learn how to do this correctly." They left. Iris spent the rest of the day reviewing the existing curriculum, making notes in the margins, crossing out entire sections that prioritized theory over application. By the time she looked up, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across her desk. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This is Agent Morrison. They told me you're back. I wanted to say thank you. I'm alive because you didn't wait." Iris stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "You're alive because you didn't give up. The rest was just medicine." His response came quickly. "It was more than that, but thank you anyway." She set the phone down and returned to the curriculum notes. 3 weeks passed in a blur of teaching, redesigning protocols, and fighting small bureaucratic battles over equipment and training time. Khalil attended one curriculum meeting, sat in silence while she presented, and voted against her proposals. He was outvoted 4-1. He stopped attending after that. The recruits, now officially her students, trained with an intensity that surprised even Iris. They practiced needle decompressions until they could perform them blind. They ran mass casualty scenarios where everything went wrong simultaneously. They learned to make decisions in seconds that most people took minutes to consider. Kyle became her de facto teaching assistant, demonstrating techniques and running drills when she was in meetings. Vasquez specialized in hemorrhage control, her precision with pressure points and tourniquets bordering on surgical. Chen, the recruit who'd hesitated during that first unauthorized training session, became the fastest at field intubations, 41 seconds from decision to secured airway. On a cold morning in late November, 6 months after the factory incident, Iris stood in front of the Academy board presenting her program's results. Director Castillo sat at the center of the table, Dr. Cross to her left, 3 other senior administrators she'd seen but never met. Khalil was absent. Iris clicked through slides showing training outcomes, competency assessments, scenario completion rates. Then she stopped on one slide that showed a simple statistic. In the last 6 months, graduates of the Tactical Medicine program have responded to 4 real-world medical emergencies during field operations. All 4 patients survived. Previous survival rate for similar incidents was 62%. She let that sit. The difference isn't better equipment or faster medevac times. It's training that prioritizes action over protocol when lives are on the line. One of the administrators, a man in his 60s with graying hair, leaned forward. "Dr. Tennant, your program has shown measurable results, but some have raised concerns that you're training agents to bypass chain of command in critical situations. I'm training them to recognize when chain of command is too slow to save a life. There's a difference." Is there? From an institutional perspective, encouraging individual judgment over collective protocol creates risk. Iris met his eyes. The risk is people dying while waiting for permission to act. I've seen that risk play out in combat. I've seen it here. Training competent personnel and then telling them not to use that competence isn't institutional safety, it's institutional liability. Castillo spoke. The question isn't whether Dr. Tennant's methods work. They clearly do. The question is whether this institution is willing to prioritize outcomes over procedure. She looked around the table. My answer is yes. Agent Morrison is alive. 4 other agents in subsequent operations are alive. Those outcomes justify the approach. The administrator nodded slowly. Then I moved to make the tactical medicine program permanent and expand it to all field agent training. Seconded, Dr. Cross said. The vote was unanimous. Castillo stood. Dr. Tennant, your program is now Bureau standard. You'll have additional resources, expanded training facilities, and authority to implement your protocols across all academy curricula. Iris nodded, something tight in her chest loosening slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove this works at scale. The meeting ended. Iris gathered her materials and walked out into the hallway. Ansari was waiting, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Heard it went well. It did. Khalil's going to hate this. I know. Ansari pushed off the wall. For what it's worth, you're doing something important here, changing how an institution thinks about competence and authority. That doesn't happen often. Iris looked at him. You started this. The footage, the report. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I've spent my career watching good people get punished for being right. It was time someone didn't. He walked away, leaving Iris alone in the hallway with the weight of what came next settling on her shoulders. That evening, she stood in the simulation lab, watching Kyle run a training scenario with a new group of recruits. He moved through the drill with confidence, calling out instructions, correcting technique, demonstrating the same precision she'd taught him 6 months ago. He finished and walked over. They're getting it, faster than we did. Because you're teaching them correctly. Kyle looked at the recruits practicing needle decompressions on training dummies. You know, Morrison came by yesterday, said he's recommending 3 other agents for the program. Good. He also said something else. Kyle paused. He said before the factory, he thought you were just a disgraced contractor Khalil kept around to prove a point. Now he thinks you're the best tactical medical instructor the Bureau's ever had. Iris watched the recruits work, their movements careful but increasingly confident. What do you think? Kyle considered. I think you're someone who refuses to let protocol kill people when competence can save them. And I think that's exactly what this place needs. He returned to the recruits, leaving Iris standing in the observation area. Her phone buzzed.
Zed. Text from Dr. Cross. Department of Defense contacted me. They want you to consult on a new combat medic training curriculum. Interested? Iris stared at the message. The Army had discharged her dishonorably for doing exactly what she was now being celebrated for. The irony wasn't lost on her. She typed back. On one condition, I design it my way, no compromises. Cross responded immediately. They're expecting that. Meeting next month. I'll send details. Iris pocketed her phone and looked back at the training floor. Kyle was demonstrating a cricothyrotomy, his technique flawless, his explanations clear. The recruits watched with the kind of attention that came from knowing this wasn't theoretical. 6 months ago, she'd been fired for saving a life. Now she was teaching an entire institution how to do the same. The system hadn't apologized. Khalil hadn't changed his mind. But the institution had adapted, slowly and grudgingly, because the evidence was undeniable. Competence mattered more than compliance. Lives mattered more than protocol. And someone who refused to accept that people should die waiting for permission had forced an entire bureaucracy to confront that truth. Iris left the simulation lab as evening settled over Quantico. The training grounds were quiet now, the buildings lit from within, the distant sound of recruits running drills barely audible. She walked across the grounds toward her office, hands in her pockets, the cool air sharp against her face. Tomorrow, she'd start teaching the next group. The month after, she'd present to the Department of Defense. The work would continue, expanding, reaching further than she'd imagined possible when she'd first signed that contractor agreement 6 months ago. She'd stopped hiding who she was, and the institution, against all odds, had decided that who she was might be exactly who they needed. 1 year after the factory incident, Iris stood in a conference room at the Pentagon briefing a panel of military medical officers on tactical field medicine protocols. The room was formal, flags behind the podium, 20 officers in uniform watching her with varying degrees of skepticism. She clicked to a slide showing survival statistics. Combat mortality rates for thoracic injuries have remained statistically unchanged for 15 years, not because we lack the medical knowledge to treat them,
but because we don't train field personnel to act decisively in the critical window before evacuation. An Army colonel in the front row raised his hand. Dr. Tennant, the protocols you're suggesting require significant autonomy for non-physician medical staff. That raises concerns about scope of practice and liability. Iris looked at him. It also raises survival rates by 18%. I've implemented these protocols at the FBI Academy for the past year. 4 real-world applications, 4 lives saved, 0 complications. Another officer spoke up, a Navy commander. Your service record shows a dishonorable discharge. Why should we trust your judgment on training protocols? The room went quiet. Iris set down the remote. Because the same decision that got me discharged, staying behind to treat a wounded interpreter under fire, resulted in intelligence that prevented an attack on a NATO convoy and led to the capture of 3 high-value targets. My commanding officer was later reassigned for operational failure. I was punished for operational success. She picked up the remote again. You don't have to trust my judgment. Trust the data. Trust the outcomes. Trust the fact that people are alive who shouldn't be because someone taught them to act instead of wait. The briefing continued for another 40 minutes. When it ended, 3 officers approached her with questions. 2 others requested copies of her training materials. The Navy commander who'd questioned her credentials waited until the room cleared, then extended his hand. Commander Price, I reviewed your after-action reports from Afghanistan. What happened to you was wrong. This presentation made that clear. Iris shook his hand. The presentation was about saving lives, not vindicating my record. Both can be true. He left. Iris gathered her materials and walked out into the Pentagon corridor, where Ansari waited, leaning against the wall with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. How'd it go? Mixed reception. But they're listening. That's more than they usually do. He walked beside her toward the exit. The FBI director wants you to testify before a Senate subcommittee next month. They're reviewing emergency medical response protocols for federal agencies. Iris stopped walking. I'm not a politician. No, you're someone who changed how the FBI trains its agents. That carries weight. Or it makes me a target. Ansari smiled slightly. You've been a target since you defied Khalil in front of an entire academy. This is just a bigger stage. They reached the parking lot. Iris unlocked her truck and set her bag inside. How's Morrison? Back on active duty, full medical clearance. He's teaching a class on tactical response next week and specifically requested you observe. Why? Because he wants his students to meet the person who taught him that protocol isn't as important as staying alive. Iris climbed into the truck. Tell him I'll be there. She drove back to Quantico as afternoon light slanted through the Virginia hills. The academy had changed in small ways over the past year. New equipment in the medical training bay, expanded simulation facilities, a dedicated tactical medicine wing with her name on a plaque outside the main classroom. She still wasn't used to seeing it. Her office had changed too. Awards she didn't ask for mounted on the wall, letters from agents who'd used her training in the field. A photograph Kyle had taken of the entire first class, 23 recruits standing in formation, competence and confidence visible in their posture. Chen was in that photo, now an instructor himself, teaching advanced airway management to new recruits. Vasquez was there too. She'd gone on to tactical operations and had already used the training twice. Both patients survived. Kyle had been promoted to senior tactical medic and was running joint training exercises with local law enforcement. Last month, he'd performed a field cricothyrotomy on a civilian injured in a car accident. 49 seconds. From assessment to secured airway. Iris sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Email from Dr. Cross with the subject line, Expansion Proposal. She opened it. Iris, the European Union's Law Enforcement Training Division has requested a consultation on implementing your protocols for their tactical units. 3-week commitment, all expenses covered, full autonomy over curriculum design. Interested? Iris read the email twice, then looked out the window at the training grounds where recruits ran formations in the fading light. A year ago, she'd been fired for refusing to let someone die. Now, international agencies wanted her to teach them how to do the same. She typed back, 3 conditions. I bring Kyle and Vasquez as assistant instructors. I have final authority over all training protocols. And we do this right, not fast. Cross responded within minutes. All three accepted. They're expecting you to push back. That's why they want you. Iris closed the laptop and stood. She had an evening class to teach, a new group of recruits learning hemorrhage control, then a meeting with Ansari about the Senate testimony, then curriculum review for the expanded program launching next quarter. The work never stopped, but it also never felt like obligation. She walked down to the medical training bay. 15 recruits waited, field kits open, training dummies arranged on tables. They went quiet when she entered. She set her materials down and looked at them. Hemorrhagic shock is the leading cause of preventable death in tactical situations. You have approximately 3 minutes from the onset of uncontrolled arterial bleeding to unconsciousness, another 2 minutes to cardiac arrest. No medevac is that fast. She held up a tourniquet. This device, applied correctly, stops the clock. Applied incorrectly, it accelerates it. You're going to learn the difference. You're going to practice until your hands know what to do before your brain finishes thinking about it. And you're going to understand that 5 minutes of training right now is worth someone's entire life later. She demonstrated placement on a training dummy, her movements precise and economical. Proximal to the injury, high and tight. Tighten until arterial bleeding stops, not until the patient screams. Pain is temporary, bleeding out is permanent. The recruits practiced for 2 hours. She corrected hand positions, tightening techniques, placement accuracy. No praise, no criticism, just relentless refinement until every single one of them could apply a tourniquet correctly in under 30 seconds. When the class ended, a young recruit approached her. Female, early 20s, nervous energy in her posture. "Dr. Tennant, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why do you teach like this? Like every technique could be the difference between life and death." Iris looked at her. "Because it can be, and because I've seen what happens when people hesitate because they weren't trained to be certain." "You mean in Afghanistan?" "I mean everywhere. Combat, hospitals, training exercises that go wrong. The location changes, the stakes don't." The recruit nodded slowly. "Agent Mercer said you got discharged for saving someone's life. Is that true?" Iris picked up her training materials, organizing them back into the equipment case. "I got discharged for refusing to follow an order I knew was wrong. The person I saved was the consequence, not the cause." "Would you do it again?" Iris closed the case and looked at her. "Every single time." The recruit left. Iris was alone in the training bay now, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly, the smell of antiseptic and synthetic blood hanging in the air. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she hadn't seen in over a year. "Dr. Tennant, this is Jamil Karnimi. Agent Ansari gave me your contact. I heard about your work at the FBI Academy. I wanted to say thank you, not just for saving my life, but for proving that it mattered." Iris sat down on the edge of a training table, staring at the message. She'd carried the weight of Kandahar for so long, the court-martial, the discharge, the years of being told her decision was wrong, even when the outcome was right. And now, the person whose life had cost her everything was telling her it mattered. She typed back slowly. "You don't need to thank me. You survived because you didn't give up. I just bought you time." His response came quickly. "You bought me a life. I have a daughter now, 3 years old. Her name is Iris." She closed her eyes, something breaking open in her chest that had been locked down for too long. She didn't respond, couldn't, just sat there holding the phone, letting the weight she'd carried finally start to lift. Footsteps in the hallway. Kyle appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" Iris looked up, wiping her eyes quickly. "Yeah, just a message I wasn't expecting." Kyle nodded, understanding without needing explanation. "Morrison's class is next week, Thursday at 1400. You coming?" "I'll be there." "Good. He wants his students to hear your story, the real one, not the sanitized version Khalil tried to bury." Kyle left. Iris stood, turned off the lights, and walked out into the Quantico evening. The air was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. She thought about the year that had passed, the institution that had tried to silence her and then, grudgingly, learned to listen, the students who'd become instructors, the lives saved because someone refused to accept that protocol mattered more than people. Khalil still worked at the academy, still avoided her in hallways, still voted against her proposals in meetings where his vote no longer carried weight. He hadn't changed. The institution had. And that was enough. Iris walked across the training grounds toward her truck. Tomorrow, she'd teach another class. Next week, she'd observe Morrison students. Next month, she'd testify before Congress about why competence should matter more than hierarchy. The work continued. The mission expanded. And somewhere in Afghanistan, an interpreter named Jamil was raising a daughter named Iris, proof that refusing to give up on one life could echo forward in ways she'd never fully understand. She climbed into her truck and started the engine. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in years, she wasn't walking it alone. She was teaching others to walk it too, and that made all the difference.